Day 52. I have read 2/3 of an article about Schopenhauer in Wikipedia. He's presented there as a fucking idiot. Although in the end, they give him credit saying that he remained the most influential German philosopher until the First World War, I suspect that many readers will not proceed to the point through emotionally loaded descriptions of his life. I mean, if I hadn't read original works of Schopenhauer earlier, after reading this article, I wouldn't have read them at all. The picture formed in my mind after I had spent an hour on this article was kind of like this. A silly boy, jealous of fame and approval, a lover of prostitutes, who wastes his time hanging out with noble loafers, being unaware of his genius and knowing nothing about what he is doing. Damn it, I'm so bloody happy that my intention to read Schopenhauer grew stronger in spite of the obnoxious article. So I decided to read Parerga and Paralimpomena instead of the world as will and representation. I want to put off his main work and first get through his brilliant essays. Yesterday in the video I said that when I first came across Schopenhauer, I was struck by his critique of Hegel, and especially by his verbal attacks. I read him in Russian, and I was genuinely surprised that a philosopher could speak such language. So now I have some of his expressions that I don't need to translate from Russian to English. The presumptuously scribbled nonsense of Hegel. Commonplace, inane, loathsome, repulsive, and ignorant charlatan. Today, I'm gonna continue my story about meeting Schopenhauer and tell you about the impact he had on my life. And the story just begins. You are privileged to observe the birth of a new genre of art. So this is it. I got it. I know what I'm gonna do. It was so hard. Like for the first 50 days, I tried to find something really important for myself. And basically I got through all sorts of things which was so small, which I didn't want to pay attention, but still, since I was focused on the audience, since in my view I expected to make a kind of impression on you, to make you like me, to make you approve my talks. And so I was looking for all sorts of information. I read some books about communication. I tried to read these books, think about them for hours, and then explain their content, describe it in as clearly as I could. I was talking about my routine. I was talking about topics which I prepare for the speaking club, and all this was kind of silly. Every time when I made videos, I was thinking, man, it's just nonsense. What am I talking about? I don't like it. I don't like to talk about this stuff, and still I compel myself to do it over and over. And that's why I don't have any emotions. That's why I stay here with kind of suspicious mindset and complain over and over. So the point is, I complain a lot that there's my language is not good, or my ability to talk about stuff isn't highly developed, and I still need to learn more vocabulary, to read more books, even though I read more than 40 books up to this moment in English, like big books. I still need to read more to be able to speak. No, I don't need to read more. I just need to talk about things which I understand, which are important for me and not for somebody else. Anyway, let's proceed further to Schopenhauer. Yesterday I finished the video by saying that I encountered Schopenhauer and he influenced my life in a way, he transformed my understanding of philosophy. Before, for the whole year I was kind of under impression after reading Hegel. And when I started reading Schopenhauer, I was thinking, man, what is he talking about? He's a like he curses Hegel all the time. He curses other philosophers. He's a kind of rude person, and to some degree I liked it because he did it in a sophisticated manner. It wasn't just, you're a fucking idiot because you're a fucking idiot. No, it's like, you are saying nonsense, and here's your words, and here's what you try to say, and you still can't say that. And here's my words, here's my explanation, and it's clear, and in comparison with yours, it's just, you're not doing philosophy, you're just trying to make money. You're trying to attract attention. You're trying to, as he said, the art of beguiling the public. I'm not sure whether I say beguiling, whether it's right pronunciation or wrong, doesn't matter. So it's kind of, I started reading Schopenhauer. It was the August of 2012. And I realized that most of his arguments are right, and they're right not because like Hegel was wrong, but because my impression of Hegel, like all my understanding of philosophy, was exactly at the level which Schopenhauer, described. So he said, like, our youth, and he refers to his time, it's like 1820s, 1820s, like 200 years ago. He says, our youth is just under impression of Hegel, but they don't know philosophy. They don't know anything. And Hegel doesn't say, it's like, he doesn't teach you any philosophy. He a good speaker. He is kind of a cunning charlatan who just learned how to speak well and how to talk about all this, nonsense, being, nothing, whatever. And yeah, that's the problem. And then I started thinking, is that truth? Like, is what he says truth? And I started asking myself, what do I know about philosophy? Like, I have read 8 volumes of Hegel. And after that, I read lots of other philosophers. I spent the whole year studying philosophy. And I just sat down and started asking myself, what do I know truly? Not like, I could write lots of things at that moment. I was writing my journal for almost a year. And I was thinking that I knew everything about philosophy. Then I sat and started asking, what do I know? And I realized that my understanding of Hegel is vague. His ideas kind of, even though I can explain a little bit what he meant by this or that term, I still don't have clear picture of philosophy. And I started reading Schopenhauer more, and I was impressed by his clarity, but it wasn't like, well, in some places and moments, he also was vague and unclear in his language, even though he says that, I am a brilliant writer, and he tries to present himself as a really brilliant writer. But in some places, of course, he writes kind of, I understand that this is like 200 years after, 200 years has gone after he wrote this book, and of course people who were reading and writing books 200 years ago couldn't write as we write now. Language transformed, our ideas transformed, but still it's like his thinking, his system of thought is clear. And after I read his main books, the World as Will and Representation, after I read his essays and few in Paragra and Paralimpamena, which I started reading in English yesterday, I also read it, but a little bit later. So it was the period of my life. It was the August of 2012. I read Schopenhauer, just one book. And in this book, again, I got under impression, and I started learning more about Schopenhauer, and I stopped learning Hegel. I read few more volumes of Hegel almost at the same time. It was about aesthetics, and it was the last volumes of Hegel which I read. From that moment, I was again under influence of Schopenhauer, and I started studying ancient Greek philosophers and poets and playwrights. After Schopenhauer, he gives lots of references to ancient philosophers, not only ancient philosophers, but modern philosophers as well. Descartes, Spinoza, Scott Erogena, Francis Bacon, John Locke, David Hume, Kant. He praises Kant all the time. And after Schopenhauer, I decided to read Kant. After Hegel, I remember Hegel criticized Kant. And when I, again, watched these lectures by Valery Petukhov, it was lectures about psychology, but he mentioned philosophers, and he mentioned Kant. And I was thinking, Kant? Like, you mentioned Kant and didn't say anything about Hegel? You're a dummy. But then, after I read Schopenhauer, I reconsidered my view, and I decided to read all collected works by Kant, which were available in our library. And there were 8 volumes. And I collected these 8 volumes for half a year. So when first I came to the library, there were only 5 volumes of Kant, and 3 were, or even 4. And others were, like, they weren't there. Somebody took them, and I took 4 volumes. And the next month when I came, I found that somebody returned another volume, and I took this one. And only when I collected 7, I started reading Kant, and it was the beginning of 2013, so after half a year. And during this half a year, I was studying Voltaire, Diderot, D'Alembert, Laroche, it was a year after. Yeah, and I wasn't studying, I just read their books. And I also read Greek, as I said, Greek thinkers. I read Plutarch, I read Diogenes Laertsky, who described all this. He has a famous book about ancient philosophers where he presents short stories about almost every ancient philosophers who lived. And he writes, like, nobody knows who was Diogenes Laertsky, nobody knows where he lived. There are some arguments about it. Some say that he lived before BC, some say that he lived after. But anyway, there's a brilliant collection of stories. And those ancient playwrights like Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides, I took in library about 5 books of these writers. And Horace also, like poet, Schopenhauer. Like, after reading Schopenhauer, I discovered the whole world of ancient philosophers, and I engaged in studying ancient philosophy because it was so fascinating for me. And as I said, I started reading them, and I didn't dive deeply into that. It was just kind of superficial acquaintance with their terminology, their ideas, with all this world. And in Schopenhauer, I just read 1 book, and later in 2013 I started rereading him, and I read 6 volumes. It's like 2 volumes of The World as Will and Idea, 2 volumes of Paregra and Paralimpomena, and 2 volumes of other essays. One which I read before, and there was another collected essays. And then simultaneously I started reading Kant. And I would like to add that in Schopenhauer, the most striking thing which hit my mind was this idea of free will. After I read about free will or on the free will, I realized, man, now I understand everything. Now I can see it's like I was deluded for my entire life about free will, about the nature of reality, about everything. Now I eventually got it, but it was, of course, it was like kind of superficial grasp, but still it was something. And since that, I started studying all these ideas and reading more philosophers to understand better what is free will and how it works. So I have just 1 minute to finish the video. I'd like to talk more about free will next time, tomorrow. And I'd like to talk more about like how all these ideas were shaped in my mind after I read different philosophers. So Schopenhauer actually was my, like, what we call him, role model for few years. It's like since 2012 till 2014, when I started seriously studying Nietzsche. And when I read Nietzsche, of course, I changed my mind because, man, well, I didn't change it to the degree as I changed it after reading Hegel and then encountering Schopenhauer, because Hegel became like nobody for me. But Schopenhauer still remains a strong philosopher, even though Nietzsche criticized him harshly. And after reading Nietzsche, it's like, well, it's very hard to reconcile Nietzsche and Schopenhauer when you understand what they are talking about in their writings. So, but all this I'll tell later. It's like this whole story, I wrote it in my native language, and I was writing my journal for since 2011 till 2017, when I shifted to English and started studying English from the beginning. So now you may see me speaking English like fluently, and yet I just started studying English quite recently. I never studied it at school. I never studied it at university. I started studying it at my own when I was almost 30 years old. When at the age of 30, I couldn't speak English at all, and I couldn't understand anybody speaking on the internet, or when I listened to some people in audio podcasts. Now I understand everything. I can watch lectures from Oxford, Yale, Cambridge, Stanford, and I'm watching these lectures all the time. I can read any book. I can speak about whatever I like. And it took me only 5 years. And I know how to teach you do the same. If you are going to watch my videos, you are going to learn lots of amazing stuff. So see you next time. Bye-bye.